So I know you're really going to enjoy these presentations. And are you ready to start, Lee?
I'm all set.
Okay. So there you go.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I am really looking forward to sharing Digital Human Library with you and hopefully introducing you to some new ways to engage your students in learning. I like to start with a picture of me and my family since I don't have the opportunity to see you. You may hear the pitter-patter of little feet as my munchkins are getting ready for bed. But I like to start by, again, just sharing that image, and I know you're, I'm sure, very busy with your families too tonight, so thank you again. So I want to start by just talking about the whole idea of possibility and the possibilities of traveling and moving above and beyond or outside of where you live, where you work, and that these opportunities often aren't available to students. I have the privilege of traveling with my family, and we do our best to go and see lots of new places. The outdoors is our favorite place to be. This is actually a picture of us when we were in Colorado on top of the world. And working in the Avon-Maitland District School Board, which is one of the more rural boards in Ontario, we cover a huge geographic area. However, we are smallest in number. Thank you for the cute alert. I think they're pretty cute too. So because Avon-Maitland is such a large board and stretches over such a large area, students in my board don't really have the same opportunities to go on field trips and experience that world of learning that exists beyond the walls of our classroom, not compared to students who go to school in the city. So as I was reflecting on my own opportunities to travel and spend time away with my family and introduce my kids to new people, places, and experiences, I wanted the same opportunities for my kids. So I started to look at, I started searching the internet actually, looking for places and people for my students to meet that were outside of our community. And one of the first places I landed was EPals. And how many of you have heard of EPals? If you want to use the polling tool, give me a check mark if you've heard of EPals before, or an X if you're unfamiliar with that service. All right, as the numbers climb, it looks like most of you are unfamiliar, and then there are some that have had a chance. Thanks, Mally, for popping that link in there. EPals is a service that connects educators with educators. So I started using EPals to find other teachers in different parts of the world. I've been an intermediate teacher for 5 years, and more recently I've spent the last 5 years in the grade 1-2 classroom. And part of the grade 2 curriculum for those grade 2 teachers out there is introducing students to communities around the world. And typically in the past, I have taught my students about one hot place and one cold place. Those of you who teach grade 2 are probably nodding, and you're familiar with that unit from hands-on social studies. And I wanted to offer them something different. I was also in the throes of taking a lot of online courses, so video conferencing had been introduced as a way of professional learning, and I saw an opportunity to use that same technology with my kids. So after visiting EPals and outsourcing some teachers that were interested in connecting with my students and I, the next question that I had to tackle was, what kind of technology do I need to actually facilitate these kinds of connections for my students? Since at the time I was not the most technologically advanced individual, this was back in 2011, I still didn't have a cell phone, and so using technology was definitely very new to me. I had a smart board and was, again, willing to try something new. So once I realized that all I needed to make these connections happen was a computer, an internet connection, and a webcam with a microphone, I hightailed it down to Walmart, spent 20 bucks on a webcam, one that I still use today, and went ahead and connected with that first school in Colombia, actually. And once my students had a chance to work with kids in a different country and learn from those kids in a different country, it really opened my eyes to a new way of engaging my students with the curriculum. It didn't take long for my kids and I to outsource other classes in other countries, and before I knew it, 3 months had gone by, and my kids and I had connected with teachers in over 12 different countries. I wish that I could say EPals solved all of my problems when it came to actually finding people, but unfortunately that's not the case. I had to do a lot of searching, and a lot of searching using Google and emailing school boards, looking for teachers who might be interested. What I'm very happy to say today is that there are so many organizations out there now, like IRON, and as well as EPals, the Center for Global Education, some other places and websites that I'm going to share later on that help you facilitate these kinds of relationships and find teachers. But after working with teachers in so many different countries, I couldn't believe how much I had learned from those experiences as well. So above and beyond the amazing experiences that I was able to offer my students using simple and easily available technology, I was getting an education myself. Shortly after that, we had our last connection that year with a class in Africa. And these students from Kenya, I think this was probably one of the more powerful experiences that I had as a teacher, and I think it was one of the more meaningful connections that my students and I made. And the reason that I say that is because this group of kids in particular and their particular living situation and the school that they went to and the kind of learning they did was very different from what my students were used to experiencing. When we worked with kids in Sweden and Russia and Colombia, they found a lot of similarities between, schooling here in Canada and schooling there. It was interesting once we got into conversations about culture and traditions, and that's really where that critical thinking piece and that comparison became evident for my students, and we looked at, how are we similar and how are we different? But when we started working with kids in Africa, most of the time my students found that things were very, very different, and so different that it really started to make them think about what it's like to live in Canada. And I want to share a video clip of during one of our video conferences with you. And while you're watching this video clip, I want you just not only enjoy the fabulous singing that you're going to hear, but I want you to take a look around the room, have a look at the students, and take notice of anything that that seems to catch your attention. So I know Mally is going to go ahead and put the link to that video in the chat box, and I know she's going to try a web tour as well, and hopefully it's working tonight. Hi, would you mind stopping the web tour, please? Great, thank you. So they actually continue to sing and sing and sing. And if you wouldn't mind just typing in the chat box some of the things that you noticed about their classroom, what they're wearing, anything that caught your attention. So if you just want to share your ideas in the chat box. Yep, bare walls, no desks. Absolutely. Yeah, poor lighting. Yeah. Bang on, bang on. So they really, there's nothing. They go to school in a 4x, concrete room with a dirt floor. There's a hole in the wall where light comes in. These students actually come from a fairly affluent community. These kids are wearing uniforms, which is not typical. However, as you mentioned, they don't have anything, yet they are so happy. And every time we talk to them, they were so happy. They sang to us every time. They were always singing and dancing. Just a very, just a fabulous group of kids to be around. And what my kids noticed, I think they were so caught up in the conversation during these video conferences and focused on the content of the conversation, like what kind of subjects they learn, why they wear uniforms and those kinds of things, that they didn't notice those things right off the bat. It wasn't actually until we had documented those video conferences and gone back and looked at the video that the kids realized, wow, like, there's nothing in their classroom. They don't have anything on their walls. They don't have paper and pencils. They don't have desks or chairs, and other questions started to come up about what it's like to live there. And I remember one of my students saying, Mrs. Castle, our custodian, sweeps up more markers and pencils than these kids have probably in a year. And they started to recognize and realize just how different life is for them. And it was more than just that recognition and realization. They started to appreciate what they had here and what they have available to them here, and how fortunate they are to be able to access all of the resources and materials and technologies even that they have available. Absolutely, and you're right, Karen. It's a great way for kids to recognize their own privilege, and it's a very different experience for kids to interact with other students in different parts of the world compared to a teacher learning that material, him or herself, and then presenting it to the students. So giving them an authentic opportunity to connect and learn from the experts really is what inspired me to start asking some more questions. And questions like, well, what are we doing to connect kids with experts? How are we providing opportunities for our students to not only learn about the world, but learn with the world? And once I connected and realized what an easy process that was, once I got over my fear of tech, it became obvious to me that, it's not only other kids that are interested in connecting with students in our schools, but I imagine that individuals and organizations and local businesses and people in our own community, initially in my community, might be interested in sharing their knowledge and expertise with kids and providing support for me as a teacher, but also enriching the classroom program. And that's where the idea for the Digital Human Library came from. I strongly believe that the work that I do with the Digital Human Library is, number one, focused on relationships and learning. The Digital Human Library is also about engaging students in learning. Because I believe that geography should not be a barrier to great conversations and meaningful experiences for all students. And I believe in using simple and easily available technologies to create global connections for our learners. I believe that all students should experience the world of learning that exists beyond the walls of their classroom. And I believe that when students have opportunities to build relationships with global learning partners, they're engaged and motivated to achieve success. So what I imagine is a more equitable educational experience for all students by engaging them in next generation learning using the technologies that inspire them to learn. So the Digital Human Library really is all about bringing the field trip experience into your classroom. And as I said earlier in the program, providing kids with that field trip-like experience, giving them the opportunity to connect with experts in authentic ways is really what the Digital Human Library is all about. So I'm going to take a minute now and share it's a promotional video put together by Royal Botanical Gardens that really highlights some of the features of a distance learning program. Royal Botanical Gardens is one of the MeBook experts in the library. And Mally, if you want to go ahead and put the link in the chat box, you can start the web tour, please.
Welcome to Royal Botanical Gardens, Canada's biodiversity fund. We're bringing RBG into your classroom to support and enhance the curriculum. Let's get your students excited about making a connection to the wonders of nature. Let's see if you guys recognize what this is. So what is it? Can you find out a little bit on water?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Mally just asked if you had to open up the web tour in your own browser, if you could just give a green check mark when you're all finished. So while we're waiting for people to finish up, has anyone been to Royal Botanical Gardens? I've done a few of these sessions, and there's usually someone that says, "Oh, I've been there, I've been there." I've actually never, I've never been, and I have no excuse. It's only about 2.5, 3 hours away from me. But this is a place that most of my students will never visit for a number of reasons. And I know I think it was Shanna, who lives way, way, way north. Taking a road trip, let alone a class trip to the Royal Botanical Gardens is, it's not even in the cards. So being able to expose your kids to these kinds of places and meet new people and engage them in new experiences is really an opportunity that we have, and I think I would say almost a responsibility to be able to share these kinds of experiences with our kids in the classroom. I want to go back to that idea of engagement, and one of my favorite quotes by Mike Tyrrell is, if you can crack the problem of engagement, not just are you paying attention, but are you fascinated by this? If you can crack the problem of engagement in schooling, then you've cracked 21st century learning. And I really do believe that, and when I look at, and even seeing that video there from Royal Botanical Gardens, I mean, those are all clips from sessions that Corinne Davidson-Taylor at RBG has done. And kids are engaged. They're engaged, number one, because we're using technologies that that inspire them and motivate them. Number two, they have a chance to meet new people and, as I mentioned before, experience new places that they've never seen before and may never have the chance to see. And we have the opportunity now through resources like the Digital Human Library to bring them those experiences into the classroom when we can't actually take our kids to be there. So I'm just looking at some questions here. Are lesson ideas and materials supplied to teachers based around the session? Depending on the content provider, yes. So if you were to book a session with Royal Botanical Gardens, they send you resource materials prior to the session, resources for the session itself, and then additional resources following the session. But really every content provider has a different way of doing things. It just depends on who you're working with. They do offer programs in K-12, you are correct, and there are additional lesson plans available through RBG. So how do you get started? Your registration is your library card. So let's do this. This is one of my favorite memes. Mally, if you wouldn't mind putting the link to the Digital Human Library registration page in the chat box. If you haven't already, you're going to have time now during our session to register for the library. Once I've finished the session tonight, so shortly after 9, I will log into the Digital Human Library and approve all of your profiles. But if you want to take a minute now and register for the library, let's do this. Great, thanks, Mally. And if you would like to put a green check mark when you're finished, then I'll know that we can move forward.
Lee, I think Tyrrell has a question. Where do I register?
The link is in the chat box, so you're going to register as a teacher. So if you click on the link in the chat box there, that'll open up the registration page in a browser on your device, and you're going to register as a teacher.
No, I'm not seeing a link on the chat box. The chat box has nothing in it.
Yeah, I don't know, Mally, do you want to speak to that? Because I can see the link there twice now, so I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm in the wrong area.
If you just open up a browser and type in digitalhumanlibrary.com, I'm just going to backtrack a slide here. You'll see when you land on the Digital Human Library website, on the right-hand side is the Register tab. If you just click on that, you'll be able to get to the registration page from there.
Laura, are you on an iPad?
No, I'm on a desktop.
You're on a desktop. Yeah, because the chat, do you see on the left-hand side the chat box?
Oh, I have to expand it. Pardon me. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. First time.
No worries. You'll get used to it. And
no problem.
Yeah. Wendy will be sending out a link to the recording in the next few days. So no worries. You'll be able to see the earlier slides and the videos as well.
For the profile description, typically teachers just type in a little bit about, either where they work, what grade they teach, whether they're subject specific, or Rotary teacher. It's really just a space for you to share a little bit about you. Looks like we're about a third of the way there. If you're just joining us, there is a link in the chat box. If you want to scroll up through the chat there, the first link that you come to will be a link to the registration page. Everyone's just taking a minute to register with the Digital Human Library. Oh, thanks, Mally. If you finished registering and we are waiting for another minute or so, feel free to, look around on the site. We should be getting back together in just a minute. I'm just over halfway there. I think we'll start again in about 45 seconds. Hey, if you have finished registering, don't forget to give us a green check mark. Okay, so we're just waiting for a few more to finish up. Take 30 more seconds and then we'll get going again. Once you submit your profile, if you want to go back in and edit it, you can do that at any time. Okay, I'm going to start again in about 15 seconds. All right, so if you wouldn't mind just finishing up that registration form, as mentioned, if you didn't get to fill in all the fields that you wanted to, you can always go back and edit that form. If you wouldn't mind just completing the required field and submitting that, I need to go ahead and continue on here. So once you've had a chance to register with the site, you do need to log in order to search the catalog of experts. When you log in, you'll see you'll have a variety of choices. You'll log in as a teacher, and then you would choose to search for Me Book experts. Once you do that, you'll have the chance to start searching their profiles. So you'll be presented with a search screen that's just got the search field box, and typically searching by keyword is your most efficient way to look for experts. My recommendation is if you don't find experts with that first search term, try to expand your search and maybe look for something more general. So for example, I had a comment on the Digital Human Library site, I think it was yesterday, about someone looking for ancient civilizations. And because those were the only keywords searched, nothing came up. But once he broadened his search to history, he had, I think, upwards of 20 some odd providers, many of which would have presented or could present topics on ancient civilizations. So sometimes just taking that specific search and narrowing it down to something a little more general might help you find the experts you're looking for. But if you don't happen to find who you're looking for, I do welcome your suggestions and encourage you to reach out to me, because chances are if you're looking for somebody, another teacher is as well. So let's say, for example, you're searching for zoos, your kids are learning about animals. You just type in the keyword zoo and click on search. There are 7 zoos registered with the library, so all of those search results would come up. Once you've found an expert that you'd like to look at, you can open their profile, and as you'll see here, all the information you need to connect with that provider is available for you. Area of expertise is always good to note. However, again, there could be additional topics that may fit in there. So if the provider lists some expertise that are along the same lines of the content you're looking for, it may be worth reaching out and asking, do you also speak on topics like this? Because you may be surprised at the answer. It's always indicated as well how the content provider or the expert wants to be connected or contacted, sorry. And in this particular case, if you're working or want to connect with the North Carolina Zoo, Mark would prefer that you send him an email to request the program. Some experts have registration forms on their websites. Regardless, whatever the preferred method of contact is, you'll see it listed on the Digital Human Library site within that profile, and those are live links. So it'll be a live link to the website, a live link to their Twitter account, a live link to their Facebook page, etc. You'll also find a program description. Now, in some cases, it's very general, and it's really open to a lot of interpretation, and the organization may just ask that you reach out to them and make a request for a program. I think what you'll find is that even experts that have a very specific program description, if you contact them with your specific request based on the learning needs in your class, almost always they're happy to accommodate. So it is always worth the ask. You'll also notice program cost on the profile as well. I'm very proud to say that 95% of the experts registered with the library do offer their programs for free. Yes, I said for free. So this is an amazing opportunity you can provide your kids at absolutely no cost. So let's have a chance to meet some of those Me Book experts. And what I'm going to do now is just share another video put together by the Royal Tyrrell Museum. The Royal Tyrrell Museum is located in Alberta, and it's a museum of paleontology. And the Royal Tyrrell Museum has been offering distance learning programs for quite a while, and you'll get a sneak peek of those right now. So Mally, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link and starting the tour. Thank you.
The Royal Scottish Museum is a world-renowned and research facility. 6 kilometers west of Glenhower, Alberta, is Canada's only museum devoted entirely to the study of paleontology, showcasing the history of plant and animal life here on Earth. Visitors from around the world immerse themselves in one of the world's largest collections of dinosaur skeletons. Most were discovered here, in the Canadian Badlands. This wealth of knowledge is now made available through the different learning studios located at the Tyrrell Learning Center, a media-rich video conferencing suite that uses the latest technology to interact with classrooms around the world.
The Tyrrell Museum employs a full-time curatorial staff, and these researchers provide the foundation for our program. PhD scientists who actually work here at the museum offer the most up-to-date information when it comes to the science of paleontology. We offer a wide variety of informative and entertaining presentations for students from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. Our programs fit right into existing curriculum, and some can even be adapted to what you and your students are studying in practice. Our website has comprehensive descriptions, including curriculum connections, for all our distance learning programs. With video conferencing, we have the ability to create an immersive experience through what we call the 3 I's of video conferencing: innovation, interaction, and information. Our studio is built for function. We can show off fossils and
All right. So if you could give us that green check mark once your video is finished. Looks like we're almost there. I'm just waiting for a few others. Yes, absolutely, Jean, I will. All right, while we're just waiting for the last few to wrap things up. As I mentioned at the start of the session, all you need is a computer with an internet connection, which I'm confident in saying every class has now, a webcam with a built-in microphone. And as I mentioned at the start, I bought a webcam at Walmart with a built-in microphone for 19 bucks, and that's what I use today. So you don't need anything fancy. As long as you have, like I said, a computer with an internet connection and the webcam with the microphone, you have everything you need to connect with any of the providers in the library. Now, typically, the computer with the internet connection would be connected either to a smart board, and if you don't have a smart board, you can use a projector with a screen. It's just nice for kids to be able to see the program on a big screen. However, when we work with classes in different places, like the example I showed you of kids in Africa, they were all huddled around a tiny computer screen, so it is possible. The specific cost for a session, if there is a cost, may not be specifically listed in the profile. It may just say that there is a cost associated, and it would depend on the program. So some providers haven't identified a specific dollar amount. you would need to contact them if they've indicated that there is a cost associated with that program, and then they would give you specific pricing based on the program you want, the grade level, and how many kids would be involved. I'm discussing another question here. So the presenter does not see the students. No, actually they do. So when you plug in that webcam to your computer in your classroom, you're giving the presenter a chance to see the kids, and then the presenter also has a webcam at their end, so that gives the kids a chance to see the presenter. Yes, Royal Tyrrell does charge, and Mally has indicated there that it's $225 for Royal Tyrrell. But as I mentioned earlier on, that is the exception. Like I said, 95% of the providers in the library don't charge for their programs. A lot of the organizations receive funding, which allows them to offer these kinds of programs for free. And the funding that organizations receive is typically to develop outreach opportunities for kids. So that's why, like I said, a large percentage, almost all of the providers in the library don't charge for their programs. However, Royal Tyrrell does. But what I can say about the programs at Royal Tyrrell, having done some myself, is that the programs are above and beyond exceptional. And they also include that whole collection of resources that I had mentioned earlier on as well. So if you're curious to know what kind of experts you can find in the library, you can preview some of the experts. And what I've done basically is just created a list organized into 3 different categories. But I can also just give you a quick sneak peek here. So all subject areas. There are experts in all subject areas. I mentioned the North Carolina Zoo earlier. Passages to Canada is an organization that encourages people who are new to Canada to share their story. So if you're looking for an opportunity to introduce your kids to Canada's multiculturalism, you can contact Passages to Canada and engage your kids in programs where they actually get to meet individuals who have come to Canada and they share their stories. Visually is a graphic design company who specializes in infographics. So if you're teaching your students how to design infographics and tap into some of those new literacy skills, they offer programs for free. Royal Ontario Museum, Banfield Marine Science Center offers programs about ocean wildlife. Royal Tyrrell Museum, as you saw, Art Gallery of Ontario, the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum. So for those of you teaching grade 6, lots of opportunities to learn about flight and space. Royal Botanical Gardens, as you saw. The picture of the woman there is that's Sheila Glazoff. She's an internationally acclaimed personality expert and educator and author of What Color Is Your Brain? So she does programs really focused on character ed and really learning about you and understanding your personality. So I see a question here. Do many offer programs in French? Some do, yes. It just depends on the organization, and you would need to contact them to find out if programs in French are available. Some experts have indicated in their profile that they do offer programs in both French and English, but again, that would be something you'd need to ask when you contacted them. So I'm just catching up on some questions here. What is the profile description required? So if you are just registering, all you need to do in the profile description is just tell a little bit about yourself. Maybe what subjects you teach, what grade you teach, your area of expertise, what you're passionate about. It's entirely up to you what you fill in that space. So what I do want to mention with regards to the experts in the library, there are currently hundreds and hundreds of experts, because when you connect with Passages to Canada, you're not just connecting with one expert, you're connecting with an entire speakers bureau, for example. When you connect with the North Carolina Zoo, you're not just connecting with one zoologist, you're connecting with possibly 10 zoologists and biologists and field researchers. It just really depends on who you want to speak to, what your needs are, and what kind of program you want. So logging into the Digital Human Library really does provide you with opportunities to connect your kids with hundreds of individuals in all areas of study, which really meets your needs and enhances your program potentially in all subject areas. When I connected with experts in my class, we worked with different individuals probably every week. And the education my kids got as a result of that far surpassed anything I'd be able to offer on my own, right? As elementary teachers, we're very generalist teachers. We need to have a general understanding and knowledge base in all subject areas, which means that, you know, we might have that one particular content area where we excel, where we're experts, but what about all the other subject areas? And how then are we bringing in additional supports to make sure that we're providing our kids with the best experience and the best information that we have available? And the Digital Human Library provides you with a resource that supports that. Your library membership never expires. Great question, Laura. So I'm going to share another sample of a program that you can sign up for, and that's with National Parks. And this is the, well, thank you. This is a program about the Grand Canyon.
When we think of Arizona, we often think of that hot, dry, dusty desert environment. But Arizona actually has a lot of diversity. Southern part of our state, we definitely have those deserts. But up north, it's a little bit different. You might be shocked at what you see. We're actually going to show you a video of what it's like to approach Grand Canyon. You seem to
Lee, can you please turn on your mic?
Oh, wow. I had my mic off. I just did a whole lot of talking and nobody heard me. Thank you for the reminder. My apologies. So, as I was saying, it's a great opportunity to introduce your kids to experiences and programs, again, that are outside of where you work. And we would never have a chance to take our kids to the Grand Canyon. So what I love about this resource as well is that this is free PD for you. You have a chance to learn alongside your kids. Every time you take part in one of these programs, you're probably going to take something away and add that to your repertoire of you know, tools for teaching and learning, that extra knowledge that you'll have a chance to take away with you. So what I want to do now is ask you to share some of your expert ideas on the cork board. And what I'll do while you share those ideas is do my best to speak to experts that already exist in the library. And if I see some experts that pop up, I'll have a chance to refer back to this board and outsource some new individuals that you've requested for the library. So if you want to use the tool on the left-hand side, you'll see there's a pen or a writing tool. You can also type text. So if you want to choose the tool that will work best for you, and if you want to share your expert ideas, you can do so right now. Oh, Museum of Inuit Art in Toronto. That's a fabulous idea. That would be a fantastic idea. Botanists. I can say, yes, Royal Botanical Gardens would be one resource to connect with botanists. The Ontario Forest Association is also a registered expert with the library, and they do programs about botany and plants and forestry and deforestation and amazing things like that. I see another suggestion here for robotics. D&D Automation is a registered expert with the library, and depending on where you live, I know if you live within Huron County, they will actually come out to your school, but otherwise they can do virtual programs on robotics for you as well. And I see that there's, someone has a question, just looking through here. Why don't you go ahead and turn on your microphone, because I just see that it's one. Somebody have a question? If you want to turn on your microphone, feel free to ask. Healthy relationships. Very interesting that you mentioned that. Halton Women's Place just registered, and the whole focus of the work they do is all around building healthy relationships and working with individuals towards that positive mental health. The social justice issues piece is also interesting. You can connect with Passages to Canada and hear stories, very interesting stories of experience of people coming to Canada. So that would be definitely one resource. There are also a number of war veterans and some speakers that have done sessions with the Human Library. And the Human Library is a movement all focused on social justice and finding solutions to that. I see fisheries and hatcheries. I don't think I have any fisheries. I'm trying to think if there would be, I can't think of an organization off the top of my head, so that is definitely a good one that I will look into. A couple of conservation authorities are registered with the library. Lab demonstrations. A great one for lab demonstrations actually would be to connect with VROC, which stands for Virtual Researchers on Call. Virtual Researchers on Call has a collection of university professors in the STEM subject areas who can speak to or, again, share some of their expertise about what it's like to work in a lab. So medical professions, I have some nurses, and again, Virtual Researchers on Call might be good for medical professions as well. Dance. I don't think I have any professional dancers. Lots of music. There's an orchestra and have some singers. Dave Bruck is a performing artist, but no dance. So that's a good one. I'll have to keep. I'm gonna look for some dancers for sure. Wastewater treatment plant. That is a great idea. So for water, one of the providers I recommend is the Safe Drinking Water Foundation. So they offer, again, programs for free all around water treatment and where our drinking water comes from. The name has escaped me now. There's a content provider through the Connect to Texas network, it will come to me, that also offers programs on aquifers, which are, if you don't know, and I didn't know, but learned through a video conference, aquifers are underground caves, I guess, that hold a lot of the well water that we drink. Film, yes, I actually have a professional actor who's registered with the library. He's also a slam poet and does some really, really cool stuff, and I'm seeing lots of ideas continue to fill the board. So I've been able to speak to some, and yes, I saw Margaret. Margaret has shared. Margaret is a specialist in arts education and teaching and learning through drama and dance. And I know Margaret is in the throes of developing her distance learning programs, and we've been working together, and I can't wait to see what she comes up with. It's going to be awesome. So feel free to continue to jot some ideas on that board, because like I said, I will come back to this and have a look and see who's in the library that would fit some of these requests. And if I don't have anybody, then I will go and find somebody. So thank you for sharing your ideas there. So the next section of the library that I want to highlight is the additional networks of content providers. So in addition to the library that I house or have curated and you need to log in to access, externally on the site, so it doesn't require a login, under the Teachers tab are additional networks of content providers. So by clicking on that tab, what I do is I list and link to a number of providers that are currently offering programs that, as I mentioned in the name, that exist as a network. So for example, and one I will highlight is the Connect to Texas network. So within Texas, there is a group of, I believe there are 24 content providers or expert groups that belong to this specific network, and the network is called Connect to Texas. So programs are all scheduled and offered through this Connect to Texas network. So instead of listing each of these providers individually within the library, I do have a profile created for them. So if you were to search for space, the Space Center in Houston would come up. However, to access this site, it's an external link as well under additional networks of content providers. So you can explore some of the programs there. I can speak to a number of programs I've engaged in. We've done a program with the Fort Worth Zoo, the Nature Center and Refuge. We've also done a program with the McDonald Observatory. We had a chance to look at Jupiter through the telescope, which was really, really cool. We've done programs with the Old Jail Art Center. They offer an art history lesson and then lead the kids through an art activity related to that art history lesson. So also very exciting. I've done a lot of sessions with the Texas Wildlife Association, and mostly in and around animals and conservation and protecting animals. So fabulous programs there in the additional network section. What I do want to draw your attention to now is an example of one of the programs that would be offered through the Space Center in Houston. And Mally, if you want to put the link to this video in the chat box there, this is a really cool little snippet of of what it looks like when a black hole eats a star. Thank you for that, Mally. That's one thing I don't love about YouTube is that next video always starts immediately following the first one. So I love space. I don't actually teach space in grade 2, but there are times that, especially in the primary grades, where, you know, if we're following that trail of student inquiry, questions about space might come up, and here's an opportunity to connect that small group of kids who are interested in learning about space. Or if you teach grade 6 or something in secondary related to that, this would be a great provider to connect with. Another example of one of the networks of content providers, and this is actually a newer network that's available, is Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And their mission is to question, explore, and conserve. So they offer that virtual field trip with experts who are actually in the field touring around. So what I want to do, and I'm only going to show the first video because I'm just looking at the time here, and I'm just going to show that first video of George Kourounis. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with George. I'll just flash this up here. George Kourounis is he's the guy behind Angry Planet. So if you're familiar with Angry Planet, he's one of the speakers that will connect with your kids to talk about his adventures and exploration. So Mally, if you wouldn't mind starting that video for me. Great, thanks Mally, if you want to stop the video there. Perfect. So I like that quick little snippet, and I show it because there are so many places that explorers travel to and visit, and not only do your kids get to see those cool places, but they get to talk to the adventurers and the explorers and learn about why they're traveling to those places. And in a lot of cases, it's to conserve and protect the environment or protect an animal or a species. So again, I'm going to skip this video, which is just, again, it's an example of George working through a session about tornadoes with some different classes. And, you know, if you're interested, it's a click away connecting with these kinds of providers. So I'm actually going to move along, and on your own time, you can explore some of those additional networks. And what I want to do, though, is definitely spend some time talking about global connections for teachers and students. So when I first started video conferencing, that's where I started, looking for other teachers and students, because that seemed like a natural entry point. And so what I've done on the Digital Human Library site is I have curated a collection of spaces on the internet where you can find teachers and students or sign up to be a part of global projects. And what I want to do now is highlight one of those providers, I guess, and I want to speak about the Center for Global Education. And I think, actually, instead of speaking about it, I'm going to let Terry, the founder of the Center for Global Education, tell you his story, and you're going to see some fabulous examples of programming for students in grades 7 to 12. Whoops, that took us to the site. So there should be a video that starts, or that is linked. And there's a YouTube link there, Mally, if you wouldn't mind. Could you also start the video in the web tour, Mally? I'm just looking at the Center for Global Education site there. Great, thanks.
Same thing.
Great, thank you for stopping that. And if you could just use the green check mark when you're done. Great, looks like most people are finished here. Great, I'm gonna go ahead. I think everybody's pretty much done. All right, so the Center for Global Education is an outstanding organization and group of providers. The programming that Terry offers covers a range of subject areas, and you know, to be able to get involved and be connected with other classes and an expert to talk about some of those bigger social justice issues and world issues really is I think the most powerful kind of experience we can offer, and authentic, absolutely, that we can offer our kids. As I mentioned earlier on, I do use EPals, and when I can't find anybody, and typically I draft a standard email that I just send out repeatedly until I hear back from somebody that's available to connect. Yes, you're right, Mally, they are offering programs, some for junior now. So through the EPals platform, you can search for teachers. They have lots of fields, so you can filter your search. Sometimes I just take to Google and search for English-speaking school boards in different countries, and I've had a lot of success doing that as well. But you'll find on the Digital Human Library site lots of links to lots of spaces that help facilitate these kinds of connections. I'm going to move ahead now to some of the resources on the site. The Digital Human Library hosts one of the largest collections of multimedia virtual tours on the web. Now, there are some links here, and I'm going to be selective, I think, about where we spend our time. I'm just going to share an example, speak to some examples of some of the multimedia virtual tours. So, for example, you could take a tour of the Vancouver Aquarium, and you can watch live cameras of jellyfish and beluga whales and sea otters. You can also explore sites like uvisit.com, and uvisit provides a huge collection of virtual tours and virtual reality on the web. And this is one sample of a tour that I'm going to share with you that you could either use in the classroom and facilitate a conversation as a teacher, or what I love about the multimedia virtual tours is that students can access these tours on their own under that resources tab on the site by searching through different categories. So Mally, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to the Rio Tinto Kennecott multimedia virtual tour, we can start that now. Great, thank you, Mally. So I just did a quick screencast there of a small segment of that tour. So you can find a whole collection of tours of different places on the uVisit site. And again, these are all accessible, and I'm just going to jump back here under the resource tab on the Digital Human Library website, Multimedia Virtual Tours. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there are several categories that you can search through, and this doesn't require a login. Your students can use these as an introduction to a video conference that they might have with one of the experts, or use it following a video conference with the experts as well. All right, as well on the site, I do list information about the different kinds of video conferencing platforms available. Each of the experts has a preferred way of connecting, whether it's using Skype or Google Hangouts or platforms like Zoom. They're all very easy to use, and the experts are happy to support you depending on what platform they've chosen. So I'm going to wrap things up just with a brief look at why teachers and students need a resource like the Digital Human Library. We're focusing on the 6 C's in education, and we're looking at improving a student's ability to communicate, to collaborate, to think critically. We want to facilitate opportunities for connected learning, and we want to give kids creative ways to engage with the curriculum. And I would argue that the Digital Human Library helps to enhance and improve these skills by facilitating, again, these kind of virtual visits with experts that not only challenge students to communicate their learning and collaborate with different people and develop those interpersonal skills that need to be successful, but it also helps them think critically about their learning because they're being challenged by the experts. And we're again offering opportunities for connected learning in a creative way. When students engage with experts in the library, we're also developing citizenship skills and character. We're offering kids opportunities not only to connect with people in their own community, but people in global communities. The Digital Human Library also helps develop some of these new literacy skills that we're starting to introduce in our classroom. You know, information literacy is their ability to gather information, you know, collect that information, analyze it, synthesize it, and then communicate their learning. And connecting with experts in this unique way gives them a chance to develop those skills. They're also developing, as mentioned earlier, those citizenship skills by working with global learning partners. They have a chance to engage with different kinds of media, and video conferencing is a kind of text. And with that opportunity, kids are developing those global citizenship skills, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the key features, I think, or one of those key skill sets the Digital Human Library really supports is that those networking skills and teaching kids how to network and providing them with opportunities to network with experts in specific fields of study based on those inquiries and their areas of interest. The Digital Human Library really is there to help amplify the amazing things you're already doing in your classrooms. You're teaching incredible lessons. You're offering kids opportunities for challenge-based learning and inquiry, and having a resource like the Digital Human Library gives you access, again, to those experts or to global learning partners that are only going to amplify the amazing things you're already doing in your space. I also like to, I always come back to this point that we want students to take ownership of their own learning. And when they have opportunities to ask questions and inquire, we need to then meet those needs by not only sharing what we know, but also connecting them, again, with those experts who can really not only sustain that inquiry, but help further that inquiry by asking questions that we might not otherwise consider. So some thoughts that I want to leave you with today, and this is one of my favorites, is that everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't. And it's just drawing on that idea that when we collaborate and we work together, we're enriching, enhancing, amplifying the opportunities for learning that we are providing for our kids. So what do the kids think? I think from the different video examples that you've seen and from some of the testimonials offered by students in those videos, they are engaged, they're motivated. We're giving them something real, and that's the one piece that I really love about that video for the Center for Global Education is that restatement of the idea that this is real, right? I'm not just reading about the world, I'm engaging with the world. I'm learning with the world, not just about the world. And that's really important. I remember one of my grade 2s said to me one day, Mrs. Castle, I wish we could video conference every day. And he absolutely just loved video conferencing. And I said, what is it that you love? And he looked at me straight in the face and said, well, Mrs. Castle, I love that I don't have to listen to you every day. And that made me burst out laughing. But I got the point, right? We are the ones that are standing up in front of those kids day in, day out. And to provide them with that variety, with that chance to meet new people is really, really exciting for them. So I believe the future is built on ideas, and the Digital Human Library is designed to help connect them. So I am looking at our time. We have 8 minutes left. I would like to open up the opportunity for questions if there are any, and I will do my best to answer. So either you can raise your hand to speak or just type your question in the chat box, and as I see the questions roll, I will answer them. This is me using my wait time. Any smileys? No smileys. No questions.
Okay, I'll put, there's a question, but I'll also put Lee's contact information in the chat box so that you'll have that as well. Is that okay, Lee?
Perfect. Absolutely. So if you have any, where would you suggest we start? I'm going to back up on here. Sorry, Jean. Permission from parents. I don't ask for permission, but what I always do is let them know that we are connecting with the North Carolina Zoo, and I let them know and also add an invitation, right? I invite them to come and join us because it's an opportunity as well for your parent community or your families to come in and learn something new and experience a new kind of program that they might find interesting. And if we can bring them into the classroom too, I think that really, again, further supports what we're doing. And so again, I don't ask for permission, but I always let them know that we have a video conference coming up just so they are aware. So if you haven't used the resource before, where would we start? You can look at some of the virtual tours. Honestly, I would suggest maybe looking at the science or social studies where inquiry, there are more opportunities for inquiry-based learning, and have a look at what you're teaching. And I would log in and search the library and just kind of see who's in there. That's often I'm in there looking around because there are so many experts now. I have a hard time keeping track of everyone, and it's good just to go in and just have a look and see who's there because you may be inspired and find someone that you wouldn't have considered. So for example, if you teach art, your instinct may be, oh, I'm going to search for artists. But I know within the library now I have a robotic art teacher. So, you know, that might change your thinking of what kind of experience you could offer your kids. You know, I also have Margaret who's working on her program in the performing arts and drama and dance. So, you know, searching for art and searching for artists might be where you start, but you never know where those searches will take you and who you might find. And you may be inspired by someone you hadn't previously considered. So when you contact an organization, how long does it usually take to hear back? They're all different. Usually it's within 24 hours. I haven't had to wait long to hear back from anyone. All of these organizations are looking for that student audience. Most businesses and organizations want to do some form of outreach. They just haven't had a way in or know who, you know, how to actually make those connections. So they're really excited to hear from you, and I think you'll be surprised at how quickly they get back to you. Does the library require whole class groups, or can teachers facilitate small group sessions? You can request anything you like. I know, depending on who the experts are in the library, there are times where I've had groups of 3 or 4 students set up with one expert. So I've had my whole class, each working in small groups with different experts, and I've kind of been facilitating in the room, on the fly, during different inquiry-based projects. So it really just depends on who you connect with. Some organizations do have a minimum and maximum number of students, but they've indicated that in their profile. Yes, me as well. Just email an expert. Yeah, you can. Again, they've indicated in their profile how they'd like to be connected. But if you have questions, if there's an email address there, you can always email them to reach out and find out what's available to you. Always ask, right? Always ask. The worst they're going to say is, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And it is recommended that you do give them, you know, a week, 2 weeks, I think, is preferred. From the time you contact them to the time that you'd like the program offered. So the more time you can give them, the more likely they are to be available. Yes, this will be available again. I know Mally will post the recording of this session. I think it's about in a week, and yeah, she just replied to you there. Let me think of anything else. Good, climate change, absolutely. The Center for Global Education would be a great place there, and or also any of the, if you search for environment in the library, you'll find a number of providers that I'm sure would be happy to speak to you about that. Yes, students can access the virtual tours from home. The only part of the site that requires a login is for the database that I've curated, the collection of the hundreds of experts. That does require a login, and you do need to be a teacher or a librarian to register for the library and access those providers. How does one become an expert? Something. Typically, if someone's interested in becoming an expert, they'll just send me an email, and we'll have a conversation about the kind of programming or the expertise that they have to offer. And once we've had a chance to chat, it's as simple as registering. And once you've registered and I've approved your profile, you are all set to go, and you've made yourself available to be contacted by teachers. So I do vet everyone that registers with the library. And yeah, it's a fairly simple process. I mean, really, every single one of you who is attending this program tonight could potentially register with the library. You have an area of expertise, a skill set, most likely one above and beyond the amazing work you do as a classroom teacher. I make jewelry. That's what I do. And I could very easily facilitate sessions on making jewelry. Some of you are chefs and gardeners and do fabulous things. And I really am trying to encourage our parent community to get involved, because you have parents in your classrooms that are, you know, nurses and doctors and lawyers and janitors and jewelry makers and artists and actors, and they would have it would be so enriching for them to make themselves available to be contacted by teachers. So one of the questions here, have you found that you can combine classes? Absolutely. But again, you just need to check on the MeBook expert profile. Some of them do have a maximum number of 30 or 35 kids. And as long as you contacted them ahead of time, most of them don't mind if you go over by a few students. It can become a lot to manage from the provider side of things if they're trying to answer questions if the group is too large. I'm just thinking, yes, it is. You know what? I love that comment, great career connections. The career talk is built into every one of these experiences. And that's another piece that I really value is that especially in my school community, and I'll speak to that, kids are very limited in terms of how they experience the world and what kind of jobs are available to them when they're finished school. And typically, kids know what their parents do, what their friends' parents do, and that teachers exist in the world. So by offering these kinds of experiences, I mean, if each teacher offered one a month from kindergarten through grade 8, these kids could have potentially been exposed to upwards of 100 different career opportunities in something as simple as sending an email. So instead of spending, your time learning a whole bunch of content for a subject area, spend your time outsourcing experts that you can invite into your classroom and learn during that time with them and take it in from an expert. It's a really unique way to rethink the kind of programming that you offer your kids. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Yeah, and
I think hopefully I didn't miss yours.
And because it is 9 o'clock and we do need to be time sensitive, I think if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to you with your email that I'll put again in the chat. But for now, and it's also in the Digital Human Library, which is a fabulous resource, and thanks a lot for sharing, Lee. It was just great. So just before we log off, I'm going to put a couple of resources in the chat box, and if one thing that we'd really like to encourage all participants to do is provide some feedback on the session. There's a couple of purposes for that. The feedback will be shared with Lee, and we all know that we had a great time tonight, and it was a great session. And the other is so we can continue funding the OTF Connects sessions, and the feedback surveys will be shared with people at OTF. So we're going to encourage you to either click on one of the links. There's a link in your whiteboard. There's also one in the chat, and I'll put it again in the chat box. And also when you log out of the session, it will take you directly to the feedback link. Once you finish the feedback survey, you will be provided a certificate from OTS, and we know that lots of people have appreciated those for their personal portfolios. So we're really encouraging people to complete the feedback survey. I'm also going to put the links in the chat box for the link to the recording that will be available in the next couple of, the link to the recording is there, and also the calendar for the next few sessions, the upcoming sessions. There's some great sessions that are coming up over the next few days. So if you would like to reference the calendar on the OTF Connects website, you can certainly sign up for some more sessions, and we really thank you for coming tonight. So in order for the recording to process, we're going to ask you to log out of the room. And thank you so much, Lee, for a fantastic session. We can maybe talk for just a second after. And we thank you very much for participating.
You bet. Great, and thank you everyone for taking the time tonight to learn about the Digital Human Library, and I wish you all the best connecting with those experts. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me anytime. I am always happy to answer them.